What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It's the last day of the conference. So hopefully next week we get back to a more normal schedule. But thank you so much to everybody who has come and hung out during these premieres, been in the live chat. I've been in a few of them. They've been interesting and some good conversations in there, good questions. And hopefully this is another one because I'm a man of my word. And I said at the last video from the Young Thug trial got to 4,000 likes that we would be talking about Mr. Bean's testimony. And here we are. I think if it isn't at 4,000 likes, it's very close. By the time this video comes out, it's probably going to be there. But I know eventually it will get there based on the numbers at this point. So here we are. And we're going to discuss a witness who admits to being high on the stand, who tells the court he's been threatened, threatened to be assassinated, all sorts of problems. And we're going to talk about how each of these individual problems, how you handle them as a lawyer, how you should handle them as a judge. We see how the lawyers and the judge handles them in this case. And Mr. Bean was on the stand for multiple days, lots of testimony, hours and hours. So what we did instead was we picked a clip from Law and Crime where they picked the 7 key moments or biggest moments while Mr. Bean was on the stand. And those are the ones we're going to go through and talk about how you deal with it and whether or not a witness is automatically disqualified if they admit to being high or on any kind of weed, prescription drugs, whatever it may be, how it would affect their testimony, how you deal with it as a lawyer. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't already. Make sure you get in the live chat and in the comments and ask your questions because that is the most educational part of this for everybody. I appreciate you being here again. And let's jump into this video. It starts out with kind of a trailer and little clips, and then we dig in a little bit more to each individual lashing out, for lack of a better term, from the witness.
I remember y'all trying to assassinate me right now in 2024. That's what I remember. Am I on trial?
No, sir, you're not on trial.
A witness says he's high in open court and asks if he's on trial? I'm Brian Buckmeyer, and we're taking you through the top 7 moments from Adrian Bean's testimony in the YSL Young Thug RICO trial, starting with a longer version of what you just watched.
I remember y'all trying to assassinate me right now in 2024. That's what I remember. That's what I remember. All this going on right here on this, got me up on this stand, talking about this and that third, with all this extra stuff that's going on. Your Honor, am I on trial, Your Honor?
Sir, you just have to answer the questions, unfortunately, at this point in time, okay? That's all I can tell you.
Am I on trial?
No, sir, you're not on trial.
So he says, you guys are trying to assassinate me. You can take that as threats. Other times in his testimony, he said that he feels like he was threatened or forced to be in here. He was going to be thrown in jail. He talks about why is he on trial? And we've talked about how certain witnesses or even victims sometimes have felt like they were the ones that were on trial and it's not fair. And what that comes from is lawyers asking, because you can ask, as we all know, have you ever been arrested or convicted of a felony? How many felony convictions? And he has some. And they get into, are you telling the truth? Do you remember it this way? You impeach him with your recorded statements. It happens with just about every witness. And sometimes it can feel like they're on trial and he's lashing out in front of the judge. And that is what it is, right? Usually inappropriate. Some judges would threaten him more or threaten to hold him in contempt if he didn't just answer the questions. He seemed like he would push back on that a lot. They gave him a ton of leeway, way more leeway than most witnesses are given. But each lawyer starts to talk about some of these threats that he brings up. So we'll continue to watch more of his testimony here.
But you have been properly summoned here as a witness and you're subject to examination until I release you.
I never consent to do none of this, sir. I ain't signed nothing. My name ain't on nothing. They come get me. Y'all don't threaten to lock me up. Hey, I got a family too.
Adrian Bean has been on the stand since late February.
So again, he said they threatened to lock me up, and that could be like subpoenaing him to come be a witness because he is a witness for the state. And, we start to see, as wild as this testimony is, there are parts of it that are really good for Young Thug and the defendants and parts of it that are really good for the state because he was involved in a crime with Young Thug in the past, but he's also very unreliable. He says the state threatened to make him show up there, threatened to throw him in prison, and all of those things that would make him a biased witness that the defense can say, look, all the state's witnesses are biased. You remember Mr. Bean and go through his testimony. So knowing that each side could potentially he could be a useful tool in the trial for them, that's going to continue to shed some light on a future answer we have.
Prosecutors attempt to place Young Thug at the scene of a 2013 armed robbery and car chase. Bean already served time for the offense, admitting to being the getaway driver. He also admitted to investigators that Young Thug was involved, but ended up getting away. Check out his questioning by Young Thug's defense attorney, Brian Steele, before he admitted to being high in court.
You just heard that you explained that you qualified it as the detectives and police. And I asked you the authorities, the police, the prosecutors, I just made it broad, that they forced Jeffrey Williams into it. Did you hear you say that?
Man, can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all now.
I don't know if he says I'm about to ghost people in here or what, but he admits to being so high right now. And you hear the defense attorney asking him questions saying, you just said that, you just heard this, because they're playing the recording for him. And he's still, with being faced with his own recording and his own words and his own voice, he's still, throughout his entire testimony, refuses to answer questions, says he doesn't remember, and basically blames it on being high. Another point of his testimony, he said, he used to do a bunch of drugs back in the day. Well, it seems like that's continued. So what do you do when a witness says they're high on the stand? You have a couple options. If you don't want that witness to testify, you could ask the judge to strike that witness, remove that witness, make him come back when he's not high. He can be held in contempt. Those are all options for both lawyers, and even potentially for the judge to step in and say, no, I'm not going to allow a witness to make a mockery of my courtroom and say he's high, especially the way that this witness is doing it. Because this witness is saying he's high in a way and manner that shows he does not have a good memory. He cannot remember things because he is currently high. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's seeing ghosts, or everybody looks like a ghost, or he's going to ghost somebody, or whatever he's saying there, basically crushes the credibility of his own testimony. So you can say a lawyer can use that. Maybe that's what Young Thug's lawyer is planning on doing. But at the same time, that's not the point of our judicial system. We shouldn't have people that are intoxicated on the stand guessing or testifying about stuff they really don't remember. We also don't want people to be able to lie and just get out of testifying when they've been subpoenaed. And like the court said, summoned to court to testify appropriately. No, you're not on trial, but you do need to be a witness in this situation because you have information that could be vital to the state's case. So frankly, this guy has probably put himself in a position for things that he said and the ways that he's acted, and it's the fact that he admits being high, that he should probably be held in contempt of court at this point. I don't think anybody would have felt like the judge went too far for holding him in contempt. Now, if you're the state, you might not want to do that because you need him to testify for you. We've seen in other trials, state witnesses show up in orange jumpsuits and testify. And that's no good either. So this guy is getting a ton of leeway that is not normal for witnesses to admit that they are high. So many times people ask questions when witnesses say, oh, I can't remember this, I don't remember that. It's like, are you under the influence of anything that would cause you to have memory issues? Are you on any drugs and alcohol today? And they're all like, no. And they're all offended. No, besides my prescription drugs, whatever it may be. Maybe he medically needs marijuana. I don't know, but he's literally saying he's high and that's why he can't remember, doesn't know what's going on in this line of questioning. And it's wild to me that they just continue asking him questions under oath. This is evidence and testimony against somebody whose life is on the line. This is supposed to be taken as true. But the jury has the ability to scrutinize every witness and judge their credibility. They can believe some, all, or none of what a witness testifies to. And I'd be interested to hear what they said about this witness or what they think about this witness.
I ain't gonna tell you no lie.
Yes, you may. We're gonna take a break.
Attorney Steele tried
So then
to
they took a
question-
break right after that. And I don't know what happened during that break, but he's still on the stand in that same outfit later.
About being pressured by a detective to name drop Young Thug at the armed robbery. Here's the problem, though. Adrian Bean apparently doesn't remember anything from 2013 because he, quote, suffered from Molly.
Due to the lack of things that I was doing.
You can tell in
back
his
in the-
eyes and demeanor that when he was wearing that green jacket, definitely looked like he was more under the influence than any of these other clips.
Days, I don't really have no knowledge of nothing. I put everything behind me from back then, and I just left everything. I've been kind of blacked out ever since then about everything that went on with me in my life back then.
Okay. And what things are you talking about, Mr. Bean?
I suffered from Molly. I don't know if y'all familiar with that.
You said you suffered from mild.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if anybody in the courtroom is familiar with that, but I took a lot of drugs back in the day.
Putting
So the drugs affect his memory from everything back then that they literally have him here testifying to. Could be his way of trying to get out of it. State still puts him on because they felt like they got enough out of him to point the finger at Young Thug, or maybe say, this is who Young Thug hangs out with. This is what they were doing back in the day. This guy admits to doing all these drugs and all these crimes. Look, that's what Young Thug was doing too. Guilty by association. I don't know. But it's a lot of fodder for cross-examination, and Young Thug's attorneys absolutely made him look like a witness that was not credible.
2013 aside for a second, at one point on cross-examination, Adrian Bean snaps when questioned about not remembering something just moments earlier.
Excuse me, you know what I'm saying? Something because I really don't understand what's going on. I don't remember. My head hurt. They keep asking me questions about this. Keep asking me questions about that. About 2013, I don't remember.
No, you can't be excused at this point in time, Mr. Bean. You have to.
He literally asks to be excused. And that's the point. And that's the problem, right? Just sending somebody home because they're high, or, because they don't remember or whatever. It's kind of like a juror trying to get out of jury duty. Most of the time, courts, lawyers, judges don't want to let people out that are just being jerks and want to get out and trying to mess up the system. And it seems like a lot of the delays came because of this witness, right? Not just the lawyer, not just the judges. I mean, not just the lawyers or the judge, but even some of the witnesses like this guy are making this trial take forever.
You're subject to examination.
I don't remember.
Who you just told the jury, the Honorable Judge Glanville, and all of us that you've been threatened to be locked
I
up.
didn't consent to come get on the stand to be a witness, first of all.
Who threatened you to lock you? Lock you up means go to
There
jail.
wasn't no threat. The subpoena go out. They say you don't show up, they're gonna lock you up. You go to jail or whatever, and all this little extra stuff like that right now. I ain't here to point fingers at nobody, say nothing like that. That ain't my job.
But you just said
It ain't for me to mention what nobody got going on in their life.
And then he says stuff and he backtracks when the lawyers try to dig in on it a little bit. A nightmare witness that the judge is doing nothing to help control. And, I get it that he's probably not that credible, but they spent so much time with him up there, which is what is mind boggling to me. Again, the state did it to make Young Thug look bad, and the defense is cross-examining him to make him look like a not credible witness. But it's just, to me, it's wild how much time they spent with this guy.
I got my own problem.
who threatened you. You just told the jury that you've been
I
threatened.
done had all kind of threats, man. Y'all just explored my whole phone number on to the world. People calling my phone right now threatening me.
How many times are we going to see trials where phone numbers get leaked, addresses get leaked, stuff doesn't get redacted? It's wild. And that's something that's streaming. I'm not going to go on a whole tangent here, but streaming does change that. Because in other trials, if you do that, you can pretty much correct it without any major problems. It's never happened to us, but I'm not going to say it never could, because we have cases with thousands of documents that might have an address or a phone number or a social security number in there, even though we spend lots of time and pay lots of money to have all those redacted. But when it gets streamed out there in open court to literally the world, that does suck. And I do feel for him there.
Texting my phone. I ain't had no sleep. I've been up all night since yesterday, 7 o'clock, from 7 o'clock yesterday to 6 o'clock this morning. Still getting calls. Still getting texts. That's my personal line y'all just gave out. On live to the public, to the whole wide world.
Now, Bean wasn't the only one to lash out during his testimony. The attorneys also had quarrels during their turns on the podium. Here's one example as Attorney Steele questions Bean about an interview he gave detectives that allegedly doesn't exist.
So we're about to shed some light on a couple of the issues that Mr. Steele was talking about in yesterday's video, arguing with the judge. And those are, number one, he wanted to talk about an interview and ask questions, and the judge wouldn't let him because they said it doesn't exist. But then number two, the state wanted to ask about Steele turning off and on the interview that Steele says doesn't exist, and the judge allows that. So he doesn't allow Steele to ask questions about an interview that the prosecutor says doesn't exist, but the defense believes does exist and has reason to believe it based on other statements. But the prosecutor wants to ask questions about something the defense doesn't exist, and they're allowed to. So it's kind of the not equally handling both sides as the judge.
Have you ever heard a recording of your conversation with the authorities, whomever, at the hospital on September 11th, 2013?
And Your Honor, that's where I'm going to object, because again,
What's the base for you?
assumes facts that are not in evidence.
It's on, it's what
And
Mr.
again, Your Honor, I want to.
And these speaking objections that have happened the entire trial in front of the jury. I mean, this is just like the Wild Wild West, even though it's on the East.
Because based on what Mr. Steele, the recording Mr. Steele provided me, that is not what is being said.
That is exactly
It
what's
is
said.
not.
I'm sustaining objection, Mr. Steele.
Your Honor,
So,
Mr.
so
Beaner,
he sustains the objection. Mr. Steele's question was, have you heard this? That there's no way you can sustain that objection. He could say no. He could say yes. Doesn't matter. No way you should sustain that objection.
said it 14, 17. That's why I was letting them know I really don't know what's going on.
He did not.
That's not the question you asked.
It is what I'm getting at is he spoke with the police before. I don't have anything from the district attorney's office or law
What
enforcement.
I tell you about that?
Based on a statement, he thinks that there's an interview that the state didn't turn over. That's absolutely something you can investigate and talk about and dig into as a defense attorney. And the state can say, you didn't talk to him, right? When they question the witness can say no. And the law enforcement say, no, we didn't talk to him. We didn't record an interview. That doesn't exist. That's the point of cases. You present it to the jury and the jury determines who they believe. And if the jury hears context in a conversation or a recording with this witness that says, when I told them before, then maybe they'll believe the defense and agree with the defense. Because guess what? It's happened. Stuff hasn't been turned over before. I guarantee it's happening in this case, just with all the moving parts. And we've heard about late disclosed pictures and documents and videos already. And each side being wrong about things that they were very adamant they were right about.
Nothing.
What I tell you about that?
I'm asking the witness if he has heard anything, seen anything. That's my question.
Is assuming facts that are not in evidence.
I'm not assuming any fact.
I'm gonna
I'm
overrule.
asking.
I'll overrule that objection. You can ask him that. You can ask him that question.
Then he lets him get into it a little bit. I'm not sure if that was one of the situations where the state came back and said they were wrong, but I know that's already happened a couple times in this case.
Turn to challenge the prosecutor's redirect examination, Judge Earl Granville wasn't having it, and another defense attorney steps in to make an objection.
Do you remember whether or not they started and stopped that recording while speaking to you?
Mr. Steele, you cannot comment. That is improper.
So again, just like yesterday, this is where I disagree with the defense attorney. She can absolutely ask that question. He can say yes or no. Just because you disagree and you were there, you're not a witness, Mr. Steele. You can't get up and testify and say that never happened, which is what he's trying to do because he was there. So he has more credibility to stand up and say something like that as an objection in front of the jury. Totally inappropriate. Shouldn't do it. A lot of attorneys would, but shouldn't do it.
Improper. Sir, that is improper. That is improper. You're not examining this witness at this point in time.
Also not testifying.
Sir, please be quiet. Sit down. Sit down, sir. Do you have an objection, Mr.?
Yes, assumes facts not evidence, no good faith basis.
I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Last but not least, Attorney Steele attempts to question Bean about Young Thug allegedly jumping over a fence, but the prosecutor barely lets Steele get a sentence out. If you look closely, Bean's reaction says it all.
Mr. Williams, number 118, that's in front of you. If a person was going to climb the wall where the fence is down, where you ran through that
Objection,
fence,
Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I stand your question.
if,
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm asking him a question.
Still, if invites speculation, so rephrase.
If does not invite speculation. If does not invite speculation. Come on. If you weren't there, where were you? You could easily start a question or at least a wind up with if and not call for speculation. And this judge just sustains it. And the lawyer's objecting after he says if. What's going on? That would be so frustrating as a defense attorney. And I mean, some of this inadvertently, because I don't think this is what Law and Crime was trying to do, but is giving more fuel to Mr. Steele's fire about the judge seemingly being against Mr. Steele and his client. Just the way that he's ruling on objections and the way that he's making comments and letting both sides say things. Now, Mr. Steele is getting in the mud too. So sometimes that's hard. What do they say? When you argue from a distance with a fool, people can't tell who is who, or when you get in the mud with pigs, you both get dirty, or, you know how I am with one-liners, not the best, but that's what he's got to worry about is he's mucking it up a little bit too with them. So you got to be careful, but it's definitely, I cannot believe the judge is sustaining objections after one word.
Can you explain to the jury how a person on September 11, 2013 would run towards the police car to climb that wall where the fence is down, with the police right there.
Judge, I'm going to object as to the form.
I stand the question.
Did you?
And then he keeps saying I sustain the question, which is just so weird because I'm assuming he means I sustain the objection. But he keeps making him ask it different ways. I think this is a totally fine question. Let the dude answer. He'll probably say, I don't know. I'm so high anyway. His eyes are closed. Like, just let him ask the question. It's so weird. And that doing stuff like this and letting lawyers object back and forth and making him ask the question 7 different ways absolutely causes delays. Absolutely.
That you see someone, Mr. Williams, running and climbing the wall where the barbed wire is down, right where the police are. Are you telling the jury that?
He didn't tell.
I sustain the question.
Is that what you're telling this jury?
Objection, Your Honor, he just said he doesn't
I
remember.
sustain the question. Mr. Steele, let's move on.
All right.
Adrian Bean is just one of hundreds of witnesses the prosecution plans to call in the case against Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams. The rapper, along with 5 co-defendants, are charged with a slew of gang-related crimes connected to the alleged street gang YSL, short for Young Slime Life. Those crimes range from drug distribution and firearm possession to armed robbery and murder. On the other side, the defense says YSL is actually a record label called Young Stoner Life, with themes surrounding tough life circumstances. As trial continues in its 4th month, we'll be there to cover all of the drama, bombshells, and make or break.
All right. So a little recap there at the end of what they're all trying to do. And again, when you're talking about a tough life and drugs and stoner, whatever combination of those things, maybe that's some of the stuff the defense thought they were going to get out of Mr. Bean as well. To me, that's not a good look for our judicial system to have witnesses like that testify. And there are things in place: contempt of court, threats, sending them home for the day, making them come back the next day. There are things that you can do, strike them as a witness altogether, even though it's giving them what they want, rather than having things like this happen. But there were parts of his testimony that were a lot more lucid, that he did get out certain facts and he did somehow remember certain things. So it wasn't like that the whole time. These were kind of just the highlights or lowlights, as you could call them. But most of these clips were what you guys were sending me anyways on Twitter and Instagram. So hopefully that hit most of what you wanted me to react to from Mr. Bean's testimony. Continue sending me stuff. Continue letting me know what you guys want to hear, because you guys drive the content on this channel, which is why you got to make sure you subscribe and hit that reminder bell. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Tragos Law, at lawyer, or my handles on there. So we can make sure we are talking and you're sending me clips and we're talking about cases that you're interested in, because the cases you guys are interested in, the content you guys are interested in, is what I want to talk about on the channel. So I appreciate you guys as always coming, showing up, showing out, hanging out, asking questions, commenting. It's always great to know you guys. So I appreciate you being here with me. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast, with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.